This conference will now be recorded.
And if you would like for me to do a roll call, I can do that as well. I'm looking at the names, but the ones who are on the phone, not on the computer, I won't know unless they identify themselves.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Can we please ask Annette to do the roll call then?
Great, thank you. Okay, so just for confirmation, I have Jay Ornelas, Jeff Bennett, Sal Prasad, Javier Costa, Jay Paul, Omar Martinez. Those are the individuals that I have reported for the voting members. Is there anyone else that such as Gilbert Sardania?
Good morning, I'm here, Annette.
Okay, great, thank you. Let me put it down. Okay. All right, and then for non-voting, I have James Weaver, Tim Freer, Larissa Place, and if can we have? Is that you, Ben? I think that's your. That might be your line, Ben. That we can hear your other meeting going on.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, there's someone else who has another meeting going on, and we can hear it. I don't know if you want to mute yourself. Okay. And then Sarah Douglas.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, Sarah. Sorry about the mix-up with the time zone. Well, I'll get that. I'll make sure I'm clear on that. We have Anita Keys.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. And then I do see Allison Wood. And Allison, which organization are you with?
I'm with Hewitt Dollars.
Okay.
Anita, it looks like Ben Wild is on the telephone too. I'm seeing a phone for him.
Okay. Allison, I don't have your, I'm going to put my email address on the chat. If I can have you all send me, there's some that I don't have your contact information. If I can get yours, Allison, so I can put you on the minutes, that'd be great.
Sure.
And then I see Kelly Dillard as well.
Hi, Annette. How are you?
Hi there. And which, tell me, which organization are you with?
I'm with Walter P. Moore.
Okay, great. Thank you. If I can get, yes,
I
ma'am.
have my colleague Tiffany Cartwright with me as well. So when you see her name, she's also Walter P. Moore.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, if I can get you guys to email me, that'd be great. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay. All right, and then I think I saw someone else. Was it from, well, we have Richard. And Richard, is it Baggins? Am I saying that correctly?
Baggins, yes, I'm here.
Okay, Baggins, thank you. With Water Development Board. Am I missing anyone else from Water Development Board?
I'm not seeing anybody, but our director may be joining us in a bit.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else that I missed that's on the call that I did not announce?
And this is Rohit from WSP.
Okay, WSP.
Yes,
Hi, Annette. This is Jennifer.
Is also there from WSP.
Okay. Is that Jennifer?
This is Jennifer Herrera. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jennifer's there too.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you. All right. Okay, so Omar, in terms of our quorum, we do have a quorum for our voting members.
Thanks, Annette. Well, welcome everybody to the second meeting of the Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group. Today we have many administrative items that we need to go over, and so you can follow the agenda. I'm essentially going to be going for every item. So item number 2, recognition of guests. Oh, actually, the time we're starting the meeting was at 9:01, Annette. That was before you did the roll call, and if you want to start at 9:07 after you did the roll call and establish quorum, it's up to you which hour you want to use. Anyway, welcome everybody. We don't have designated alternates yet, but that's something that the voting members should consider. shortly. And then we'd like to get started with member updates. Does anybody have anything to share, things that have happened in the last couple of months? I'm sorry, I'm having some technical troubles. I'm not able to hear. I'm not even sure if you all are able to hear me.
No, you're good.
Okay,
You're
sorry
good.
about that.
So there weren't, no one reported, no one wanted to make a report. But I was just wondering if you wanted to make any, identify any items on your part.
Not at this time. I think it'll come up in subsequent meetings, but let's go ahead and then move forward. Item number 4, review and approve the minutes for the meeting held on November 5th, 2020.
Yes,
I'll
I
move to
did.
approve.
Is that Dave Hall?
Yeah.
Okay,
Second, Sal.
thank you.
And right before we make the approval, I just want to ask if we can change on item number 14, number 14 on the minutes. We changed the date to today's date, January 21st, and then fill in the name of the secretary, whoever gets chosen today. That's
Okay.
to fulfill that role. Okay. So we have a first and a second. Any further comments before we put it up to a vote? Okay, so without comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Was somebody opposed? Did somebody vote opposed?
I didn't hear anyone.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard it was a late aye, I guess.
Okay, for item number 6, consider nominating and electing a vice chair and secretary. Annette, if you can take over this item, please.
Yes, real quick, Omar, we were gonna do, I'm sorry, did you skip over number 5? The
I
updates
think
and
I did.
presentations?
My apologies.
I only asked that question because Richard made sure that we elevated that to the top, so I didn't want him to feel slighted. Okay, go ahead, and I'm gonna make Richard the presenter now, so you can go ahead and,
Perfect.
okay, it's coming. Okay, maybe not.
Well, while we're getting the set up so I can share my screen, I just want to welcome everybody again to your second meeting. You may have seen that other groups may have had a couple more meetings. They've been discussing a lot more, but you guys are still on track for everything. Just a lot of administrative things today in everyone's second meeting. And going forward, there will be more deliberation on tasks moving forward. But the big kind of progress that's been made in the past 2 months is that the sponsor, Rio Grande COG, is creating their application to apply for grant funding from the TWDB in order to, fund them and the technical consultant you guys will be procuring. All right. So that application I'll go over at the end. I just wanted to give kind of a flooding 101 update. It not only does it benefit all members, because some of you may have planning or flood background, but some of you may not. Again, this is just to make sure that everybody starts on the same footing so that you guys can deliberate on topics effectively, as well as for members of the public that are joining meetings, that are engaging in this process. This makes sure that they are informed around the basics of flooding as well. I'm watching on my screen over here. There we go. So just going over for about 20 minutes, and then I'll go over the RFA. If you have questions, there'll be a break after the flooding 101, as well as at the very end if you have questions for anything from the TWDB. Let's see. Flooding 101 starts with kind of thinking about what a watershed looks like. A watershed can drain into lakes or streams or the ocean. If you imagine a drop of water that on any land surface, where does that water drop end up flowing to? The boundary of the watershed is usually a ridge or divide, as you see in the left figure. And water or snow melt is collected by those tributaries into the main channel. We can look at watersheds at many different scales, referred to as the hydrologic unit codes, or HUCs, with the smaller watersheds being like HUC 8, HUC 10, HUC 12, or you'll have the larger HUCs, which ended up forming the actual regions themselves. And now all of the regions that we are working with in this flood planning process are based on watersheds rather than jurisdictional or political boundaries. That's different than any sort of water planning or groundwater conservation groups that you guys may be familiar with. So these are explicitly defined by watersheds. Flooding in Texas, usually we're either in droughts or we're in floods. So if you look at the figure on the left, you can see that almost everywhere in Texas has had some sort of floods in the past 25 years, especially with the darker blues having 50 or more recorded floods in those counties. And El Paso County is one of them. Some of the counties around Big Bend area have had more than 50 floods in the past 25 years. So even though your region is out in West Texas, floods are still an issue. And it's important that we, as a state, kind of work together to make sure we're addressing the issue. If there's any sort of background information that you guys want to read more up on the right, you can see our state flood assessment. Oh, sorry. That was put together a few years ago, which started the regional flood planning process. It's located on our website, and you can learn more about why you're here as a group in that assessment. So per definition, we need to have a solid definition of what a flood is. And so it can be a temporary or a condition of partial or complete inundation, so that meaning it's submerged of normally dry land. And it can come from any source, whether it be from runoff or surface waters, or for the coastal basins from from the ocean, from tidal surge, etc. So here you can see examples of some floodplains. If you've ever looked at some of the maps provided by FEMA or used by the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, you're probably familiar with some of the terms in the left cartoon. The natural water level is shown in the dark blue, with floodwaters creating the special flood hazard area, or the 100-year flood. We'll get to this term in a minute because everyone's kind of transitioning that term into calling it the 1% annual chance flood event. And on the right-hand side, you can see a real-life example of the natural stream channel that's flooded, and it created a fringe on either side. As you can see in the cartoon, the difference between the floodway and the fringe on either side. Even though floods are generally considered destructive to life, destructive to lots of property, there are some benefits of floods that we can recognize. So we can, when we preserve floodplains, we can reduce flood velocities and curbing sedimentation and erosion. When you have preserved floodplains, they can contribute to groundwater recharge into the aquifers that we end up drawing from. They can provide lots of recreation and quality of life, providing trails around green space and parks, and then creating, of course, habitats for plants and animals, migratory animals across the region as well. So getting into the terms, the 1% annual chance flood event. This is the flood that has a 1% chance every single year. A lot of people refer to this as the 100-year flood, but it's not that it happens once every 100 years. No, this year has 1% chance. Next year has 1% chance. It's just a matter of how often that happens, because you could have a 100-year flood this year and again in 5 years. It's just the statistic of every year that it could happen. There is the 0.2% annual chance flood event as well. And that is referred to as the 500-year flood, which is a massive flood that we also plan for. So instead of calling it the 500-year flood, where you think about it once every 500 years, now every single year that goes by, there's a 0.2% chance that that flood of that magnitude can happen. So as you see in the graphic there, the light blue is shown as the 1% annual chance flood event that stream will rise up to. And then the orange, the 0.2% chance, annual chance, is shown in the orange, and it's a much larger area. So structures in those two zones, you will be planning for throughout this entire process as needed. So there are several different types of floodings. Depending on which region you're in, you have different types of floods. So you guys are not along the coast, so you guys won't have coastal flooding to deal with. But you guys may have to deal with structural failures from dams, or riverine floodings from the Rio Grande, flash floodings from heavy rainfall. As we all know, it comes pouring down. Or up in the Panhandle, there's shallow flooding near the Cadillac Ranch. And all of these different types of floods, you can plan for and prevent damage. So for planning for all of those types of floods, you can come up with different solutions. You can come up with structural solutions and non-structural solutions. So on the left, you can see the grove of mangroves along the Texas coast, and it creates wetlands that not only help stabilize shorelines, and absorb the storm surge, but they are important nurseries for the fisheries and ecosystems down there too. So preserving the existing mangrove wetlands or restoring lost mangroves is a non-structural example you can use to mitigate coastal flooding. Structural example is the Galveston seawall, particularly used in hurricane events and storm surge events along the coast. It's an elevated structure that increases the elevation of Galveston. Some other structural solutions that are possible are examples of levees, dike flood walls, channel alterations, culverts, floodgates, and detention ponds. On the left, the dam near Mission, Texas. In the center is storm drains in urban areas that help collect runoff and divert it to stream channels. And on the right, you can see a stream bank stabilization project in Austin, Texas, where floodwaters quickly flowed into this area and started eroding the sides of the bankaway and increasing the velocity. Some examples of non-structural solutions. You can see on the left, the homes were elevated because of the building requirements of building 18-foot elevation on the Boulevard Peninsula along Galveston in Galveston County. This may seem like a structural solution, but when we or FEMA typically refer to a structural, has to do with major infrastructure that controls the movement, like we saw on the previous slide. In the center, you can see an example of the Turnaround, Don't Drown campaign. It's an educational campaign to teach people not to cross flooded roadways. Educational campaigns and flood warning systems are examples of non-structural. And then, of course, the Houston Audubon Society's Oaks Nature Preserve. This is an engineered wetland. It's a TWDB funded project that allows the absorption of floodwaters and slowing of them as well. And this is an example of a nature-based approach to flood mitigation as well. So some of you all might be familiar with the National Flood Insurance Program, or the NFIP. Even with all these solutions, the structural and the non-structural, we can't always reduce the risk to absolute zero. And so in areas where there is still residual risk, it's important to have flood insurance, which most insurers do not provide. So the NFIP is there to provide flood insurance to vulnerable communities. In exchange, local communities agreed to adopt floodplain management regulations to reduce their risks. Here's just one of many educational campaigns and information that FEMA and the NFIP release to promote this program on the right. All right, any questions about some flood basics or that you have pertaining to your region or at all?
I mean, in our region, I mean, surely it's, this is Sal Masood, by the way. Thank you for the presentation. That's really informative. As in my background, being a civil engineer, so we deal with a lot with, you know, flood issues and, you know, developers, contractors. Anytime you apply for a permit, you'd have to deal with, you know, flood issues, and they depend heavily on the flood maps that are issued by FEMA. And lately, of course, FEMA have issued a new set of maps that deemed a large sector of the upper Rio Grande in flood zone because of the levees not being certified or accredited, for that matter. And additionally, we've noticed even not close to the levees, some of my clients have complained heavily that these maps are not accurate. Do we have any kind of room to talk about that in these discussions here, or this is not the venue for it? Because, you know, in one instant, they're showing flooding, you know, almost like 15, 20, I mean, on a high elevation on a mountain, you know, and showing it as the 1% flood chance, which highly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a movement in El Paso to protest and the issuance of those maps, but you know, us as a group here, we're not taking that on, right?
So during this process, once you guys procure a technical consultant, and working through the scope of work, which is the massive task of this plan, is that you guys will first identify the region, the areas of your region that have maps made for them from FEMA, and most of them may be around the Rio Grande, but some other parts of the region may not have flood maps created yet. So one of the first major tasks is to identify where does mapping need to occur. Then once you kind of have an idea of where mapping needs to occur, then you guys can go ahead and look at, okay, where can our local knowledge then help provide more information to the maps that we do have. And there will be a point in this process where you guys and the public can provide localized knowledge that may not be shown on a map, or that a map may incorrectly display. That will be later down in the process, and that will be working with the technical consultant that you do procure.
Good, thank you.
This is Jeff Bennett. I'd like to speak to this topic. You know, the problem with mapping is that rivers and streams are dynamic systems, and once you build a map, that's just a snapshot. The flood conveyance capacities change through time with sediment accumulation. For instance, the flooding in Presidio and Ojinaga in 2008 was a normal event, except the channel had become filled with sediment. So beyond just mapping, we need to, in some cases, I think we're going to need to think about monitoring those conditions as they change.
Mm-hmm. Right, and all that updated information, there will be a collection point later in the process for any sorts of updated information or localized information. Or if you guys, if there are significant changes, you guys may end up recommending this area needs to be, this map is way too outdated, and you identify it as an area that needs to be restudied again. You guys will be able to identify those areas. If there's no more questions, I'm going to transition topics a bit from flood to more technical and administrative. So this is talking about the request for applications. So it's the grant money that the TWDB provides to the sponsor that they can then use to procure a technical consultant. To give you guys an idea of the overall timeline we're on, this February-March time period coming up, we'll be executing grant contracts with the sponsors, so with Rio Grande COG, and at the same time, simultaneously, Rio Grande COG will be posting to procure a technical consultant and eventually executing that contract around early this year, maybe February-March time period. The time period then it will be work until the next January, which is the technical memorandum, which is considered like the halfway point of the plan, will be due. And then the draft plan will be due August of 2022. And eventually 2 years from now, the final plan due to the Water Development Board. So the legislature gave us $19.5 million in available funds that we needed to allocate between all 15 of the regional flood planning groups. You'll see in a slide or two the breakdown of that money. The sponsors, today is the last day for the grant applications, and Annette is working on getting that submitted today as well. We will be working to execute those contracts as quickly as we can, so that that money then can become available for the technical consultant and the sponsor. If you guys are interested in the grant applications and documents, this is on our flood planning first cycle documents webpage. You can see kind of for all members what you might want to consider taking a look at is the scope of work. That outlines the 10 major tasks that will be completed throughout this entire planning cycle. Similar to water planning, if any of you guys have water planning experience, we tried to organize them a way similar to flood planning or similar to water planning, but definitely flood focused. So you guys can
Richard, Dave, I'll have a question.
Yeah.
Is either for Annette or Richard, is our application submitted for Region 14?
No, I'm submitting it today, Dave.
It's what?
I'm submitting it today.
Okay, I just saw the suspense of January 21st, so I thought I'd ask. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so we're still have several regions outstanding, and so we're just following up with them today to make sure that they get them submitted so that we can review and get this moving quickly. The breakdown between all 15 regions, it was based on a formula that we created, and it had a base amount of $750,000 for each region across the board. And the additional money that went to each region, it was based on criteria such as number of counties, the number of coastal counties, historic flooding and NFIP claims, stream miles, and population estimates. So this is the total amount of money each region gets for these next 2 years to complete this first plan. So Region 14 has the 1.0881 million. If you want to see how that's then broken down per each of the 10 tasks, that is on our website, how we kind of estimated based on how like water planning broke it down by percentages. And you can see that 1.08 million broken down. Task 1, we expect this amount of money. Task 2 expects this amount of money for each region. Does anybody have any questions regarding the RFA process? At the next, I comment before questions. At the next meeting, I can present an overview of the scope of work, each of the 10 tasks, to make sure you guys are familiar with it. And as time goes on, we'll go deeper and deeper into the details of each of those tasks.
Richard, this is Annette. I do have one question just to make sure that the sponsoring entity is correct on our timeline.
Yep.
We were anticipating posting this RFP at our board meeting for the Rio Grande Council of Governments on February the 26th. Does the flood planning region, are they supposed to take any action prior to that in terms of us allowing us to go ahead and put that on our Council of Governments agenda?
That is up for the group to decide, and you and the chair, if there needs to be any action taken on that. If the group or the chair needs to review anything about the technical consultant, that is up for you guys to decide.
Okay. Okay, just want to make sure that we were, I will have that discussion with the chair just to make sure that we are good with your timeline, because the way that you showed that on one of your slides is that we are looking at when would you want your sponsoring entity to identify your finalist and go into contract with that consultant? What is that time frame?
Generally, we're trying to do this as quickly as possible. I know we have, I think, only one region having posted their request for qualifications or request for proposals, whichever way you guys end up deciding to go. And so over this next month, we expect many more regions to be posting all of those, procuring their technical consultants. So it's up to you guys. February from objective sounds okay in the timeline. We want to execute our contracts with you for the grant applications before you execute with a technical consultant. That's kind of the only big timeline.
Okay. Chair Martinez, are there any questions in addition that you would want to ask in terms of the procurement for the consultant?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And I just had a question. Once we get proposals from contractors, who does the evaluation?
So we can have it in the RFQ itself in terms of the evaluators. So if the group wants to have the executive committee, who's going to be there's going to be nominations and selections for that. You all can serve as the reviewers for the proposals. That's one way that we can go at this if you'd like to explore that option.
Does the COG perform that function for other contracts?
So we do, but I would be more comfortable if we had the flood planning group involved in this process, just because we do not have the expertise in this specific function in terms of, I guess, making in evaluating the proposals and making an educated decision.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I just wondered who was going to do it. I understand maybe it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Omar, I'm not meaning to supersede anything. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts were exactly the same. The way it originally worked with the water planning group is that the COG, once they had selected the initial consultant, then the COG would took over most of the selection responsibilities when subsequent contracts came about. But the initial one, the water planning group was very involved.
Will the sponsor have any hand in that selection?
Well, that's what we're talking about, Sal, in terms of the Rio Grande Council of Governments. We would like, at this moment in time, my preference would be for the selection group to be generated from this planning group and myself. So in terms of me having any other staff involved in this process, I don't think that would serve well for the planning group in terms of understanding exactly what the needs are for the group and what the document's supposed to achieve.
I think that sounds like a reasonable approach. I concur with that.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding scope of work, RFA, technical consultants? All right, thank you, Omar.
All right, thank you very much. let's then move forward to the next agenda item, number 6. Again, consider nominating and electing vice chair and secretary. Annette, if you'll please take over this item.
Yes, so in your bylaws, you do state that you will be selecting a vice chair for this planning group, and you will also be selecting a secretary. So if we can have nominations in terms of vice chair, and then we'll move on to secretary, and then after that discussion, perhaps we can get someone to make a motion for those 2 members, and then Chair Martinez can, our chair can go ahead and take that action. So at this moment, we don't have anything, it's open to the floor. So if anybody would like to nominate or self-nominate for vice chair, in terms of the position and the time frame, we don't have it in our bylaws to where the chair or the vice chair has to be, I don't believe we do that in terms of a timeline for these positions. And so, Richard, can you do you recall in terms of with the other planning regions, do they have a timeline for the executive committee? Or expiration, I should say.
So within the bylaws, it'll go into kind of splitting up. I believe executive committee is voted on, I want to say yearly.
No, yes, I misspoke. I have it right here. I apologize. We do have it where you're selected annually in the same manner with the same terms set forth. So I apologize. I was thinking of water planning. So we do have that one on an annual basis. So don't feel shy to self-nominate yourself or nominate someone else because you will not be in this position forever. I think that's one of the concerns that people have often is that they'll never be able to get off. So
If I can, I'd like to make a comment about this. One of the things that we did that made our water planning group successful was to make sure we had representation in the system from both the rural community and the urban community. And in thinking about that, I thought maybe it might be very useful to nominate somebody from the rural area. And Jeff, might you be interested in a nomination for this vice chair?
Well, I hadn't thought about it. I don't know what that does to my time commitment. That'd be my main concern. But I agree with you. We should. It would be helpful to have someone from the rural side. Maybe someone can answer my thoughts about time commitment. I mean, it's the executive meetings.
and when and if Mr. Martinez would not be able to chair the meeting, it would fall to you. So those would be the 2 major commitments.
Okay, I can do that, I guess.
I'd like to nominate Jeff then.
Second.
Just to make sure
Okay.
I have Paul and Omar Martinez as the first and second. Chair Martinez, do you want to go ahead and take this action first then?
Sure. So with the first and the second set, I'd like to call this on a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Omar,
Aye.
Aye.
Omar, you might want to ask if there are any other nominations first.
Okay. Is there, well, I was going to ask as part of the discussion, is there anybody else interested in this position that want to self-nominate? Okay. Without any further discussion then, I'd like to call it up for the vote again. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Then Mr.
Thanks,
Bennett is
Jeff.
now our new vice chair.
Congratulations, Jeff. I do have a nomination for the secretary, and I had tried to nominate Javier Acosta once before, and I'm going to put my voice and say, I would like to nominate Javier Acosta for the position of the secretary. And I do agree with David about having the rural areas be represented, because oftentimes it gets ignored with the big metropolitan areas.
And I agree. I can't think of anybody better than a representative from the Rio Grande joint venture to represent the rural areas.
So my nomination for secretary is for Javier Acosta from the city of El Paso.
And Mr. Acosta, just to let you know, in terms of the responsibilities of the secretary, the way that we have it in the bylaws is that the secretary ensures that an advance notice and agenda for regular meetings will be provided to the full membership, Region 14, and set forth in the Water Development Board rules. And then supporting information and member requested materials shall be distributed to the full membership with notice and agenda or at the meeting as deemed appropriate by the chair. And so this sounds like a mouthful, but it really falls on the sponsoring entity. So I think that this would be something coordinated with our chair and you and me in terms of ensuring the agenda is up to your satisfaction and what documents needs to be included in that as well. But it wouldn't be such a significant task for you. That is one of the main roles for the sponsoring entity.
Understood. I know I would like to be part of that selection committee as far as the technical advisor. Just to put that in there as well.
I'd like to nominate the Rio COG as the secretary function.
I think that'll just be a default, one of our responsibilities, Mr. Paul.
Well, I think if you were officially the secretary, as with the water planning group, it would be a better function. And you guys have the capabilities to distribute notices and public notices and take the minutes and do all the recording and everything like you did done in the water planning group. So I make that nomination.
And may I ask Richard again on this one? In your other regions, are they showing it as a sponsoring entity, or is it open to one of the members knowing that the sponsoring entity is doing it behind the scenes, so to speak?
So most regions, it mostly falling onto the sponsor for kind of the secretary duties, but the secretary is responsible for making sure it gets done and ensuring it's on time, and just coordinating with the chair and the sponsor.
Have you seen them nominate a sponsoring entity as the secretary? I just want to make sure that.
I'm sorry. I have not. It would fall under one of the voting members as the secretary.
I promise we'll do the work, Dave, even if we don't have any title.
Okay. I just want to make sure the secretary who's volunteering here understands the totality of the role.
Yes, sir.
Dave, are you interested in the secretary position, sir?
No.
I thought so.
Thanks for the offer, though.
I imagine, but still.
Appreciate the thought.
Well, this is Gilbert Saldana. I'd like to second Sal's nomination of Javier Acosta as secretary.
Do you need a second?
We do have a second.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And then we have Gilbert seconding.
Okay. With a first and a second then, let's call it up for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody opposed? All right, and motion passes.
I think
Next
there needs to
item.
be some good clarity on exactly what this task is going to be, and probably need to get together with you, Annette, and make sure he knows exactly what it is.
Yes, sir. I think his job will be to keep me on my toes. That's
okay.
the short.
Okay. All right.
But we'll get together.
Okay.
All right. Item number 7, consider nominating and electing members at large to serve on the executive committee.
Yes,
So
so,
again, would you cover this role again?
yes, sir. So on the bylaws for the executive committee, we do have it where it's stated that there will be at least 2 at-large members to serve on the executive committee, and these individuals would be charged with I'm just going to read it out to you so I can make sure that I'm not saying anything, that I'm missing anything. So the 2 members will also be selected annually in the same manner as the other officer positions, and the membership at large shall be removed and their vacancies filled in the manner prescribed under the article. The duties of the executive committee are to carry out the duties that are imposed in the bylaws themselves, and the voting members of Region 14 may delegate administrative decisions to the executive committee unless otherwise in these bylaws. And so similar to Water Planning Group, when we have the executive committee, their main task is to allow themselves to get a little into a deeper dive with topics that are on the agenda and be able to provide an informed decision or propose direction to the general membership. So this would be serving in the same capacity. So the one thing that we do have right now is we do have 11 members for the water planning, for the flood planning group. And of those 11, we have the 2 vacancies. So we have 9 right now. And with the executive committee, that would take us to 5 out of the 9 members. So there aren't too many others out there who would be able to serve as the executive committee since they're already in officer positions. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of eligible members, we have Mr. Ornelas, Ms. Christensen, Mr. Masood, we have Mr. Rodriguez. Those are the ones that out of those 4, we would have to select at least 2 to be on the executive committee. And then once we, since we still have those 2 other positions vacant, those are the only 4 that we have right now.
I'd like to nominate Dave Hall to the executive committee. And this one he can't reject.
I'm happy to do that. Thanks, Omar.
I second that.
Okay, so we have Omar Martinez, and then we have a second from Sal. And then for Dave Hall. Would you like to take action?
Yes. So let's call it for a vote. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Good to have you in the executive committee. We need you.
Okay, who is a current member of the executive committee now? Is it the secretary, the chair, myself, and who else?
And Mr. Martinez. So that's who we have.
Okay, Omar.
It's Omar, Jeff, and Javier, and you. And so we need one more.
Yeah, we needed one more. Okay, all right, I got it.
Well, this is Gilbert Saldana. I'd like to self-nominate myself. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Gilbert.
I second that.
Okay. So Sal, second. And
Who's
Gilbert.
Jay?
Jay.
Oh, Jay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so a first and a second. Let's cuddle for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item, discussion on required member training on the Open Meetings Act and Public Information Act.
Yes, and so just to make sure that everyone's aware, we do want our members to go through the training for Open Meetings Act and public information. And so if you already have gone through this training, if you would like to email me a copy of your certificate, that'd be great. And if you haven't, I will provide you with the link in terms of where it is that you can access that information and be able to view the training. Are there any questions for me?
If we did this once for the water planning group, do we need to do it again? You already have the certificate for that?
Yeah, you know, I guess the one thing I would say on that one, Dave, is that there are some items that have changed, and so it wouldn't hurt to go through it again, just in case there's any items that have been updated since then.
Then having seen the videos recently, they did add like a small blurb, a couple of extra minutes of video content where they explain the new rules.
Okay, I'll look forward to the email. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, and that's all I have on that item.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay. Item number 10, I'm sorry, item number 9. Update on Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group solicitation process for individuals to fill required member positions. These include river authorities and water utilities.
Yes, so on this item here, wanted to update everyone. I neglected to ensure that I was following the appropriate days required to make available for those who are interested in submitting their nominations for these positions. And so the nominations are going to be due February 22nd, I believe. And then after 5 days, the executive committee will review those nominations to bring back to the flood planning group for you all to decide on those nominations. And so that is a little bit of a delay in terms of when we can meet again, because I wouldn't want to make us have an additional meeting just to cover this one item. And so that will come into play in terms of when it is that we're going to meet again. But again, the positions are for water utility, one position for water utilities and one position for river authorities. And so I will be receiving those nominations no later than February 22nd. And then I will submit those nominations to the executive committee for review and where they can meet and discuss. And then thereafter, you all can have a meeting to vote on these nominations and including any other action items that you need to take. Are there any questions for me?
Is there a person at the water utilities that primarily focuses on the stormwater program?
I do believe that we will be receiving a nomination from El Paso Water Utilities. And so they will be, and they do have that focus on stormwater. In terms of the river authority, I think that one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. I know that on the first set of minutes, you all talked about inviting National Water Boundary Commission. So I don't know if there's any other discussion you want to have on this one, Omar, with regard to the river authority. In addition to water.
There's also members from the Pecos River Commission that might want to join us. And so we should certainly send out and reach out to them and let them know this opportunity is available. I have reached out to IBWC. My understanding is that they are considering sending someone in, but with the change in the federal government, I don't know what their actions are going to be in the end.
And as required by Water Development Board, I did send out this notice to every county clerk within our 23 county region. So I'll do another iteration of notifications in case there's anyone else that any other entities that we haven't specifically made aware of these positions.
I do like the idea of inviting the IBWC. I mean, they take a big role in the management of the floodplains, big hand to play in this. So we should pursue that one, in my opinion, and get somebody from IBWC to be with us.
And then I don't know if I'm going to ask the question to Richard in terms of other regions. Have you all had a federal agency, so to speak, serve in that capacity, and just any concerns with that or anything else we need to look into?
Of what I know, there has not been a federal agency that has like filled in for the original 12 position. Remember, that is a position to represent all river authorities that exist within the region. What other regions have done is created either voting or mostly non-voting positions for those federal or other state agencies, and then have representatives from that agency sit in that position.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll make sure that we do one more thorough information public outreach in terms of the River Authority to make sure that we have some nominations from that area. I know we'll be fine with the water utility section, and then I know that there's discussion of possibly opening up this membership to include others as well, and so I know that's down the road, but we'll make sure that we take care of these two first.
All right, any other questions on this item? Okay, item number 10, update on the status of regional floodplain grant contract with the Texas Water Development Board.
Yes, and so we've already had a discussion on this item through Water Development Board, but just as a reminder, we will be turning in the application today. It's due at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Central, so I will be getting that out to the Water Development Board. And of that amount, the $1,081,800, $60,000 of that can be used towards the sponsoring entities' work and effort, and so we are carving out that amount. And then we also have funding that we're setting aside for travel when and if that will happen, hopefully sooner than later. And so that is what entails what is entailed within the application itself. In terms of the technical consultant procurement process, I did mention that as well, that we will be putting that before our board of directors for the Rio Grande Council of Governments, seeking approval to post the RFQ, and that will be at our February 26th board of directors meeting, which will be at 10 a.m. And then let's see, so discussion on the scope of work that's posted with the Water Development Board. It's prescribed from Water Development Board in terms of what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So I'll go ahead and I can send out a copy to the group after it's turned in, so you all can see what's included in that work. Are there any questions for me with regard to this agenda item? Okay, that concludes my portion.
Just clarification point to that, and just to make sure you're aware, the $60,000 number is the maximum amount of money allowed for personnel costs. The sponsor is able to reserve more money if you have more direct costs as well.
And so I would assume that if that were to be the case, we would be able to request an amendment down the road. Is that what you all are looking at in terms of if we get to that point?
Yeah, with the technical consultant's budget, yes.
Okay. All right, but yes, so we've put in our request is to do the max of the 60,000, not to request over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Item 11, consider means by which the Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group will consider and host a public website as required by section 361.21b.
Yes, and so what I wanted to throw out to the flood planning group is that we currently have a website for our water planning group, and it's West Texas westtexaswaterplanning.org. And so I would like to see if perhaps we could combine efforts. And Omar, what was the domain that you thought would be a good one to utilize?
So if we use the initials of the flood planning group, the urgfpg.org, we can set it so that it forwards all searches to the the water planning group, and therefore the Rio Grande Council of Governments and Annette can have both groups under one website, reducing the administrative burden and cost for hosting and things like that.
And so I do want to have the discussion with the water planning group, at least in the meantime with the executive committee, to ensure that this is a viable option. But since the infrastructure has already been done, I think that this is the most efficient route for us to take. But are there any concerns from the group here in terms of us utilizing a site for both functions, water planning and flood planning?
No concerns here.
Good for efficiency.
Okay.
Now it is an item that you want voted on, Annette. The wording says it.
Well, I think that what I can do is we don't have to take any action on it right now. I'll come back at the next meeting to provide some more detailed information in terms of whether there is any additional costs or what it's looking like, and then we can take action at that. If that's okay with you.
Do we know if that address is available?
It is actually, it's already up. If you type in on your browser urgfpg.org, it'll take you to the water planning webpage. And we did it just as a test. I never took it down, but it's already there.
Okay, got it.
All right, item number 12, discussion and consider taking action on group policies for handling public comments. Annette?
Yes, as you can see here, these 3 items, what we're looking at doing for public comments, if anybody would wish to provide written comments prior or after the meeting, they could email those to me, and there's my email address, and to also include the heading of Region 14 of Rio Grande Flood Planning Group Meeting on the subject line of the email. Secondly, if anyone wishes to provide oral comments at the meeting, they could submit that request to me again through email in advance of the meeting. And then if any additional information is needed, they can obtain that from the council governments. And here is our contact information, physical address, as well as the email contact. And so on this one, just to make sure that you're in agreement, Chair Martinez, this would be an action item that you all would take in terms of us utilizing public comments in this manner?
Yes, and my understanding is that other regions took the same approach. So I'd like to call for can somebody make a motion to approve this item, please?
So moved.
Second. A second from Jay.
Omar?
Yeah, I think there were multiple seconds.
Okay. I caught Jay. I saw him on camera.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So with first and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 13, consider a means by which the Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group will accept written public comment prior to and after meetings.
And I'm sorry for having this one on there. I think we already answered that one with number 12.
Okay, so scratch that one out.
Will the website that we established, the .org website, have maybe a form that somebody can fill in and submit to you? So if they go to that website and they have some comments, they could type those comments in and then email it to you directly? That website would have that type of form to fill in?
I think we can add that. It's not like it's not available right now for water planning, but I think that that's something that we can do. It's pretty straightforward to take on.
Yeah, since we've got 23 counties here instead of the the water planning number, I think it'd be really useful to have an ability to do that.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a note of that.
All right, item number 14, discussion of the required solicitation for persons or entities who request to be notified of Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group activities.
So on this one, I think we're in a good starting point because those who are sitting in on the meeting, I did ask for them to submit to me their email addresses, and so we can create a listserv for them to be notified. And so one manner will be that we will have a listserv that we will keep updated, so that way whenever we're submitting any information about Upper Rio Grande, they will also be included. And then falling into what Dave suggested in terms of the website, we can also have that available. So if anybody is ever interested in following the activities of the Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group, they could make that request to where they can be notified of our activities. So I would say these two manners we could take. Are there any other ways that you all would like for us to ensure that everyone who wants to know the activities is informed?
Do you have an address for each of the 23 counties right now, Annette?
I do have the addresses of the county clerks, but what we can do is we can expand that to where the agendas are being sent out to the clerks and the judge. Do we want to also by water district, water supply? What do we think?
Yeah, I think the more we can distribute information to those communities that are away from El Paso, the better off we are.
Okay, so what I can do then is, so we've already identified, so what I will, this is how I can present it in case anybody wants to make a motion. The way that, the manner in which people are going to be notified of the activities will include through listserv, through our website, and then also through emails to public in our 23 county region. And when I say public entities, I should say water public entities. Is that sufficient?
Would you please also add any incorporated little smaller towns, if you include them, the mayor, city administrator?
Okay, so we'll say public entities. So if I just say public entities, that will be more inclusive then. Okay. Okay, and so unless there's anything else that you all are thinking we might be missing in terms of informing.
That's it.
Okay.
All
Do you
right.
want to take
I don't think this is an item that allows us to vote.
Okay. Okay.
Item number 15, discussion and consider taking action on allowing the Rio Grande Council of Governments to accept annual supplemental funds for the Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group from willing local entities. And Annette, if you don't mind, I'll explain this one. This one, I recommended to Annette that she include this item. Reason being is in taking a look at the funds that the Texas Water Development Board provides and the way the water planning group evolved over time, the Texas Water Development Board made significant initial investments in getting the group set together, but then the funding reduced over time. So then it was up to the local entities that were in the water planning process to contribute to the flood planning group in the form of annual, because you can call it membership dues or fees, completely voluntary, to the point where it allowed the Rio Grande Council governments to sustain the program within their entity. I'd like to get ahead of the game and start asking willing entities to provide some supplemental funds to the COG. If the monies are not used, they can be left in reserve. And at least for me and from Jay, the El Paso County Water Improvement District number 1 will already make our contribution. It's going to be the same amount that we make to the water planning group. And so I'd like to call on anybody that's here that is from a local entity, especially a unit of government, if they're interested in contributing to this. It can be a small amount, but and anything helps. And again, this is to sustain the flood planning group over time. Right now, Annette has plenty of money to make this happen, but who knows what happens with legislature in 2 years once we submit the initial plan, how that will change. And I think building that fund over time, I think is a good idea and good forward thinking. So if you all have any feedback on this, what are your thoughts?
I think, Omar, for Rio Grande COG, we definitely can, now that it's already out there with the planning group, we can definitely put this on our agenda for the board of directors on the February 26th meeting. And so right now with your members that you have, I would venture to guess that they probably don't feel comfortable answering on behalf of their entities, but such as the city and county of El Paso. But with our board of directors having our commissioners and our city representatives on our board, I think that we can take the discussion further.
Make a motion to accept this proposal.
Second.
Who is the second? Who's that?
I think it was Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so then with the first and a second, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
A comment from TWDB, just saying that we understand that the budget is tight for completing the entire plan, but we think the allocated funds are able to get this first plan done. But we do encourage all local engagement to supporting this. So if you guys wish to do more research or more investigation or more analysis in any parts of the plan, those additional funds, if you guys raise any, can be used to do more work.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments on this item? Okay, item 16, general public comments. I'd like to call on members of the public that are joined us. We have quite a few. If you have anything to share with us, say. Now's the time. Okay. All right, item number 17, consider date and agenda items for the next meeting.
Yes, so as I was mentioning, we need to fill this, or we need to have the group vote on the 2 vacancies. And looking at the bylaws, it does state that the executive committee is going to receive and process the nominations no sooner than 10 calendar days after the deadline. So if we're looking at the 22nd, February 22nd is the due date. We've got, so we could have a meeting as soon as the 4th would be the 10th. March the 4th would be the 10th day of when it was received. And I don't know if Richard, if we would be allowed to actually have a meeting that day, that 10th day, or do we have to go on to the next one, which would be the 5th?
Can I offer a suggestion? Since you are having your RFQ posted around the 26th of February, I'm not sure how long that's going to be open, but potentially having the executive committee review both the technical consultant submissions as well as the vacancy submissions, and then have a meeting presenting all of that? Is that timing?
So then if you, let me ask this question on the, from what you've seen for those who already, I think you said only one entity has posted, but are they giving like a 2-week turnaround or 3 weeks? What is the process they're putting out there in terms of submission dates once it's posted?
What I've heard is 2 weeks posting so far.
Okay, so then, let me see. I mean, we could, I'm sorry?
I'm getting notes from some of my managers that some groups have been posting for 4 to 6 weeks as well. So it's up to you on how long you want to have that RFQ opening. Oh, sorry. I'm getting RFQ is usually longer than 2 weeks. Okay, so yeah, if you just want to review the vacancies around that March 4th and have the executive committee review them and then present at sometime at an early March meeting to the group.
So what we could do is we could actually, we can get the board approval on the 26th and we can post it that day, February 26th. And then if we say that it's due in a month, it's going to take, I mean, I don't know, Omar, that would take us kind of like towards the end of March, beginning of April.
Let me ask you, is that enough time for the consultants to get the work done? I know that the deadline's pretty tight. And also I'd like to include a representative from the water utilities to be part of to get their buy-in when it comes to selecting a consultant, because they're going to be, especially like, let's say El Paso Water submits a nomination and let's say that we select them, they're gonna, their input is going to be very valuable since they're really the stormwater entity in El Paso County. So I'm thinking I'd like to have the nominations approved as soon as possible so that we can have a full working group, maybe include the IBWC or whoever gets selected for river authorities already in it. And then as a group, even though the executive committee will make a recommendation to the full group, I think the full group needs to be involved in selecting the consultants. We're going to be with them for a number of years, and it's important for all water user groups to be represented.
So we could have a meeting possibly then March 11th, if we wanted to stick with a Thursday. We can have that meeting March 11th for the entire flood planning group, and the executive committee will meet prior to that to go over the nominations and any other business that we may have. We can have that on our agenda as well. But then we also will understand that we will then have another meeting possibly in April, early April, to review and discuss the proposals that came in from the RFQ, and you all can decide as well. Does that sound like a reasonable timeline?
Let me ask a question. I just want to make sure I understand what you're proposing. So you're saying 4 March for the XCOM to take a look at the nominations for the 2 fill positions, and then 11 March for the full group based on the XCOM's proposal or recommendation?
Yes, and I only said the 11th because it's a Thursday, and I don't know if we want to stick with Thursdays as our meeting days, but you can have it as soon as the 5th with the whole flood planning group to vote on the nominations if you chose.
I would appreciate us considering Tuesdays, but that might be another topic for another discussion.
What do you think, Chair Martinez? Do you want to go with the specific day, or do you want to check on availability?
The only thing we'd be doing then on the 11th is, as a full group, would be approving the nominations?
Yes, unless there's any other action items that Richard thinks that we would need to take that does not include the consultant.
2 other agenda items that are recommended for you to consider are to appoint a liaison down to discussion of appointing a liaison down to Region 15, which is the lower Rio Grande group. that liaison would become a non-voting member on the Region 15's group, and your person, your liaison, would report back, would represent your region on Region 15's group, the Lower Rio Grande, and they would report back information about what Lower Rio Grande is doing, and as simultaneously, the Lower Rio Grande flood planning group will also be selecting a liaison for their group and sending them over here to your group as a non-voting member. So discussion on selecting a liaison, as well as another rule requirement is hosting pre-planning public meetings. So that's 2 meetings that are geared toward engaging the public and getting their input on your regional plan. There is information sent out about that, and I can re-forward that to the executive committee and sponsor. But you can either have separate public meetings, pre-planning meetings, or you can have specific agenda items on regular meetings as well, just specifically geared toward that pre-planning.
I mean, if we're only meeting, I mean, yes, thank you, Richard, for having all that. But if our point is to get to the point of having the full group with the 2 additional nomination, which is important, is there any reason why we have to wait till March 11th for that meeting? Could it happen earlier? And that way, the second meeting, that would be the deciding on the selection of the consultant, can happen in the first 2 weeks of March. Would that something like, could we have something in the latter part of February for the nomination of the liaison and the nomination of the 2 additional members, voting members?
Well, so Sal, on the bylaws, and that's something I had to get myself used to because it seems longer to me than the water plotting group, but once we receive the nominations, we have to wait 10 days until we take action on that. So that's why there's that delay between the 22nd and March 4th. So I think the soonest that you could take action on these items would be, and that's where I don't know, Richard, if we have to wait 10 days and so we take action on the 11th day, or can we take action on the 10th day?
I see. There's a time.
It is that, I would say it's, you can take action on the 10th day, but I will point out that at later meetings you can adjust that provision in the bylaws if that is not suit your needs. That is not a rule requirement, but it would need to be an agenda item if you wish to change that in the bylaws for future uses.
Okay. So Omar, what do you think?
I think we should have a meeting on March 4th. I know that the COG board will also consider the supplemental funding on the 26th of February. So it allows us to consolidate all the administrative requirements, and then we can focus all our efforts on selecting consultants and then moving forward the plan thereafter. So my recommendation is we meet on March 4th.
For the XCOM?
We can
The
have
executive committee, Omar?
We can have the committee meet in the morning and then like an hour later have the planning group.
Okay.
If that's something you would want to do, Omar.
That's fine.
But just for clarification, the COG on the 26th will be putting out the consultant. I mean, we'll be putting out the RFQ. We already requested approval, or we already received approval to submit the application itself, which is due today. So yeah, there's no supplemental funding that we're going to be. So we would, if we meet on the 4th, we can't take any action on the RFQ because it's still too early.
What I meant is, I thought you mentioned that on item 15 in this meeting where I was talking about the supplemental funds from willing local entities. Did you need to bring that over to your board?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. You're correct. Yeah. Okay. We can have that as an agenda item also. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So then it sounds like it's March 4th.
Did we decide on how long the RFQ would be advertised? I would suggest, we've had success out here with 2 weeks before, and maybe if we don't get a response in 2 weeks, we advertise for another 2 weeks, but give ourselves the flexibility to have a response within 2 weeks, if that's possible. It's just a thought.
Well, we have quite a few consultants who are viewing this meeting. If anybody wants to make a public comment on the timelines that they are accustomed to, maybe they can give us some insight.
Yeah, that would certainly help.
Anyone before I say your name?
I guess this is Kelly Dillard. I guess my thought is that we know this is coming out and we can work on it now. You can't officially post it until the 26th, but we would have time, and 2 weeks would be plenty.
Kelly,
And
where are you from?
I am from Walter P. Moore, and we have
Okay,
an office
thank
in
you.
El Paso. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so my thought is that you want as much time as possible for your consultant to get in and get busy working. And so I think, given the fact that we feel comfortable with 2 weeks, I'd recommend going sooner than later.
We also have a comment in chat from Heather Harris. 2 weeks is less than I've had to respond within.
Do we want to make a decision now? Well, I don't know if we can take any action because it's not on the agenda, but in terms of the decision to how long we're going to keep that RFQ open, I can have that discussion with the chair. We can do a little bit more research and inform the planning group of what deadline we ended up establishing, or we can have more of a discussion now. What do you think, Omar?
We have another comment from Allison Wood. Will a draft RFQ be available beforehand to review, as we have seen in some other planning groups? Yes, I think the draft RFQ language is already in the Texas Board website, so you're able to see it. And my understanding is we're not going to change anything from that. Annette?
No, but I guess this may be in terms of, and I'm not sure, again, I'm going to lean on Richard, but in terms of how we decide what the scoring mechanism is going to be as well, that's probably going to be special to each sponsoring entity in terms of how they come to that decision.
Correct. It is following your procurement process.
So
there are no draft RFQs posted. There's draft contract language posted, but as well as the scope of work that is already posted is expected to be very, very similar as well.
What we can do then, another suggestion is that we can, now that we have the executive committee established, we can have another meeting in the next week to lock down what we think about how the RFQ is going to look in terms of the timeline, and you all can make that decision. This is a suggestion.
I think that works.
And then what we can do then, Omar, is we'll make sure that we're not stepping out of bounds in any way in terms of what information we're going to be before we get approval from the board. But anything that we're allowed to do prior to the board, such as a draft, I can, if we're sure that we're not, that we're in line with our policy, then we can definitely put that kind of information on the water planning website, and then I can notify the entities that it's up and running if we go that route.
I think that works.
Okay, so then it sounds like we're going to have March 4th for the flood planning. I think Jeff Bennett said that he does have meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays. On those days is best for him. That works with. He's asking for either Monday. So do we want to stick with the 4th, which is a Thursday, or do you want to take it to the next week?
I'm fine with that week. Doesn't matter which.
Okay, so we'll go with March 4th then. And if we're going to have the executive committee meet before, do you want to set this one? What time do you want to set these meetings at?
I didn't hear what day you said, Annette. Would you say the 5th then?
March 4th.
4th, okay. Why don't we do XCOM at 9 and then something else at 11 Mountain?
I agree.
So that'll take, that'll be at noon Central Time. Do you want to go ahead and set it at 10? Do you think an hour and a half is enough discussion for the executive committee?
All we're considering at this point is the 2 nominations?
Yeah, that's it.
Sure, an hour and a half should be plenty.
So we have the executive committee at 9 a.m. on March 4th, and we have the flood planning group meeting at 10:30 Mountain Time on March 4th as well.
Are those going to be 2 different address calls, or will they have the same address?
There'll be 2 different calls.
Okay, all right. I agree. We need some proposal for agreement.
Sounds good for me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Last item. I need a motion to adjourn.
We didn't even ask Richard. Make sure, Richard, are you available on March 4th?
I am here to serve you guys. So yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
All right, then can I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Joe Bob's not here.
A second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. You'll have a great day, great week.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next time.